but to the future. Okay, that's really useful.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic, as shown, is to assure the market of our sustainable supply of oils and fats, mainly palm oil, for the future. If you look at the picture, it's also very interesting how an oil palm plantation would look like. It's very green, with the palm trees having a lot of fruit bunches and a lot of canopy. Describing a bit background of the Malaysian palm oil industry, we all should be aware that the oil palm is not indigenous to Malaysia. It was brought by the Dutch and the British during the colonial times from West Africa down to Indonesia as well as to Malaysia. And in fact, the oil palm came to Malaysia more than 100 years ago in 1870. And the first commercial plantation as an agriculture crop for the oil palm was only started in 1970. And so our oil palm industry is almost 100 years old, another 7 years to go. As you can see how the industry has developed, the planted area, which started very small in 1975 with 0.64 million hectares, has now reached 4.85 million hectares in 2010. And that means we are occupying more than 60% of the agricultural land in the country, in Malaysia. And of course, of the total land area in the country, the oil palm covers about 14.2%. So this is how the oil palm tree would look like from close range. You can see a lot of fruit bunches, which is the commercial target of what we try to produce. And the red bunch is the bunch that is ready to be harvested in order for the bunch to be sent to our extraction plants called palm oil mills to get the oil. So the bunch has got a lot of fruits, the size of which is slightly bigger than normal grapes. And a bunch like this may have up to 3,000 fruitlets, weighing up to 25 kg. And you can see that this bunch has got the fruitlet has got oil from two types of oil, both from the mesocarp, the outer flesh, giving you the palm oil, or what we often call CPO, crude palm oil, and the kernel giving you palm kernel oil, PKO, as well as palm kernel meal for animal feed. So it's a very productive little fruit that when put together from this bunch weighing 25 kilos at least has 20% or more oil. So it has at least 4 to 5 kilograms of oil contained in a bunch. And that's why it's very productive, that with the harvest of a bunch you can already obtain about 4 to 5 kilograms of oil. So when we extract the oil at the mill, you can see on the left the crude palm oil. It is semi-solid, it is rich in carotene, giving the red color. Carotene is the source of vitamin A, and when it is refined, it gets into yellowish liquid oil at the top and whitish solid fat or stearine at the bottom. And when this is further fractionated or separated, you can get solid fat component called stearine, RBD, refined bleach and deodorized stearine, and the liquid cooking oil called RBD olein. from the actual nut or kernel, we get also crude palm kernel oil, which has no carotene and therefore is whitish in color. And once refined, you get refined, bleached and deodorized palm kernel oil. And once fractionated, you get palm kernel stearine and palm kernel olein. And palm kernel stearine is very useful cocoa butter substitute. Now, if we look at the whole oil palm process of growing the crop, getting the tree to be productive, we see that of the whole tree, only 10% of the biomass produced by the tree is the oil. And the other 90% of the dry weight of the biomass is made up of all these other biomass other than the oil. Meaning we get the oil palm fronds, the kernel cake, the shell, the empty fibers from the bunch, the empty fruit fibers, the fibers from the fruit nuts itself, fruitlets itself, and also some effluent that we discharge and treat as palm oil meal effluent. So all these fibrous material, biomass material, they are now very useful for use both in manufacture of timber products or furniture products like medium density fiberboard, but they are also useful for making plywood out of the oil palm trunks. They are also useful for generating energy and electricity. So I believe some Korean investors are already deep in research to utilize the biomass, which is produced at the rate of 10 times more than the amount of palm oil produced by the industry. So there is a lot more biomass in the palm oil industry than compared to the oil. And yet, the current focus is only on the oil, and therefore we have a huge potential to develop the biomass industry in the Malaysian palm oil industry. So if we go to the global scenario of oils and fats, because we play an important role, this chart is very important to view. We can see on the right side are countries in the world which are net exporters of oils and fats. And as you can see, the major net exporters are Indonesia, Malaysia, and Argentina. And some other very specialized net exporters of oils such as Philippines, coconut oil, and so on. But more on the left, and including South Korea, these are countries which are net importers, that you don't produce enough for self-sufficiency, you need to net import. And because of this, many countries which are net importers and very few net exporters, you can see the important role that Malaysia is playing to supply the world with adequate requirement for supply of oils and fats. And just to highlight that Argentina, Brazil, the US, they may be exporting soybeans, but I'm talking about oil. The soybeans that the US export to Korea or China eventually will produce your own oil locally, and yet you still have to import. So that's why US is not here. Even Brazil is very small net exporter of beans, of oil, because they export mainly beans, which is converted to oil in China, and still China is not having enough. So that's how to interpret this chart. And what it means is that as Argentina and Brazil develop their biodiesel industry locally with biodiesel mandates, there will be even less availability from Argentina and Brazil. So the main sources will continue to be Malaysia and Indonesia. And with the world population increasing by 70 to 80 million people a year, the demands of oils and fats we estimate will continue to increase by 4 to 5 million tons additional a year. And to supply the 5 million tons of, let's say, soybean, then it will require 10 million hectares of new additional land a year. We don't think that that is very easy to obtain because 10 million hectares is twice the planted area of oil palm in Malaysia, if you like. And so we think that the additional increase could better be supplied if we expand because oil palm, because it will only require 1 million hectares of oil palm plantation additionally every year to supply the new 5 million tons requirement annually. So, and yet we are also facing that world arable land is stagnant or shrinking due to population growth and other applications of land like building more cities and highways. So the amount of arable land will continue to be shrinking to be less than 1 acre per capita in the near future. Now, there is a U.S. Basic limits to growth model which says that as the world industrial output increases rapidly, it will reach a time when it hits a limit because of population growth. We cannot cope with the industrial demand for resources, and even pollution may impact the growth potential over time. So this limit to growth also suggests that in the commodities like oils and fats, we may also be hitting the limits to growth if we are not able to plan well to sustain the supply of commodities like palm oil into the future. So we need a lot more planning and coordination to ensure sustainable supply rather than succumb to such limits to growth curve into the future. And one thing to notice, these limits to growth, they may be appearing not too far away in the future, maybe 2020 or 2030, where we are really facing such limits before catastrophic decline in such parameters may take effect. So that is something that we have to consider because, as I said, arable land is declining, and if we look at the initial signs of how we are coping with the supply sustainability of oils and fats at a global level, we are beginning to see the last 3 years the stock usage ratio declining, meaning that we don't have much stock and we increase usage. So the ratio has been declining, and this could be an indicator of challenges ahead because we are not producing enough while the population growth and increased demand has required more oil to be consumed, and therefore the stock usage ratio has come down, and that has a tendency to kind of force prices to go up or increase because of market forces that supply is not increasing at the rate of increased demand. So that could explain why currently we are experiencing slightly higher price of oils and fats globally, including palm oil, compared to those years where we have very good supply stock usage ratio. Well, of course, we are producing oil for food, palm oil, and we are talking about world food security. Today, more than 1 billion people, 15% of the world population, do not have sufficient food on a regular basis. The World Summit on Food Security did emphasize the need for food security as part of their global targets. And even the World Bank has identified global agriculture as important. So this is a familiar world population growth chart which, as I said earlier, will reach 9 billion people in another 20 years' time or 30 years' time, and that will require a lot more supply of oils and fats. And as we predict and project the amount of oils and fats we need for the future, we are already beginning to see that demand will be very steady in red line consumption because of population growth. But if we reflect back on the supply capability, knowing that only a few countries like Malaysia and Indonesia are really capable of increasing supply, and when we project their supply capability, we found that there would be difficulty in matching the demand requirement of the future. So we see a gap developing between supply and demand. That is good for the producers because we could get good price. The market will ensure that price will adjust to reflect this gap in supply and demand. But for the consuming world, we do need to plan as how to actually promote improved supply in order to have a sustainable source of all the oils and fats requirement by the world market. Now, if we look at the challenges again, scarce land is mentioned here as an obvious parameter why we are going to face shortages in the future unless we do something with yield improvement, which I think the Honorable Minister has mentioned. We need to improve our yield so that even with not much land available in the future, we are still able to produce enough. And so this is a chart to show that oil palm has got 10 times more yield than soybean, 4.4 tons against 4.13 tons of palm oil. And on top of that, we still have another half a ton of palm kernel oil from the same land. So palm is a very high yielding crop. And if you look at the area occupied by global oil palm plantation of about 12 or 13 million hectares, this is only constituting about 5.31% of oilseed area. It's not very much. Total oilseed is 229 million hectares. So, as mentioned, in terms of agriculture, globally, oil palm occupies very small land, and yet it is contributing a very good amount of oil for the world market, the largest, even though it occupies the smallest land area. And so here we can see how oil palm planted area has increased, output has increased from just 5.1% to 32.3% when we compare among the many vegetable oils shown in this pie chart here. In other words, the dominance of palm oil as a capable supplier is never doubted when you look at this chart. And if you look at the area as mentioned, palm oil, although playing a very big role in the supply and production, occupies a very small piece of the land area for vegetable oils, as you can see here. Compared to grains, this time we include grains and oilseeds, oil palm area is only 1.5% of total grain area and oilseed area together. And that means that if you are worried about land use or opening up land, oil palm has only added 15 million hectares out of the 969 million hectares cultivated. But as I said, palm oil has added only 12 million hectares from the original position, compared to 114 million hectares for other oilseeds. So you can see the growing importance of palm oil from this chart. And in the Malaysian scenario, as mentioned earlier, we are only now reaching 4.85 million hectares. and we are second largest producer of this commodity. And the stock presently, this may interest some traders. 2009 our stock was rather high, 2010 the stock did reduce, and right now, yesterday it was announced 1.61 million tons, somewhere here. So our stock is still very low, or relatively low, and price has reflected that. Malaysian export to major countries, you should all know that our main destination country of export is China, importing 3.48 million tons. The EU, Pakistan is a big importer, India, and also the USA, because the US is using a lot more palm oil to overcome their trans fatty acids problem in using soya oil. And South Korea is a very nicely developing market, although we have been here for many years. But lately you can see the trend of an increase in imports by South Korea. Obviously, South Korea being a net importer has to import, and the main source is obviously palm, and again, palm from Malaysia. Thank you very much for the support of palm oil imports from Malaysia rather than from other countries. Here we come back to assure you how Malaysian palm oil can assure sustainable supply. There is continuous research and development to improve yield. This is very important. And MPOC, also represented here by its Director General, Dr. Chu, will be presenting later. And actually, we have a very strong research institute to back our industry. And as we expand the supply, we are also expanding research to find more applications for palm oil, including its use in biodiesel. But an important application that we have just developed in South Korea is the use of palm kernel cake or palm kernel meal for animal feed. Although there may not be a presentation of that particular application here, but I can tell you palm kernel cake is a very good feed material for producing more milk for the dairy industry in Korea, as well as for the meat industry as well, for cattle. So we have been very focused in producing oil palm as an agriculture crop. We have complied with the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO. Many of our producers are members of the RSPO and able to supply sustainably certified palm oils as well. But most important is our business ethic. I would say here or claim here that the Malaysian traders would honor their contracts through good and bad times. So that is good to hear, hopefully for the importers, that they can rely on our traders with their long history of palm oil exports, not only in dealing through good business ethics, but also ensuring that they are capable of meeting your specifications on the products that you want to buy. Okay, we have to share the same source of supply from Malaysia with the rest of the world, but any allegations leveled at Malaysian palm oil and how we produce, I think, could only be answered by saying that we are established totally on legitimate agricultural land. New plantings have been on land gazetted for agriculture, and we would say we are 100% sustainable, or the most sustainable among the oilseed crops, because all our plantations are legally licensed and registered with MPOC and enforced to make sure that our operators and players in the industry are well regulated. In fact, these are the companies that have obtained certified sustainable palm oil, because European wants this type of certification to be part of their import requirement, and we have enough of certified RSPO palm oil potentially available, although the demand or uptake by Europe is not as high. And we have so many regulations to enforce to ensure our industry is practicing good agricultural practice, good quality practice, good, let's say, manufacturing and all types of other practices that we are controlled by so many regulations, as you can see. So in summary, rising global demand for oils and fats will not be easily met with the limited land available in the future. So possible solution is to rely on high-yielding crops like palm, and for the palm oil industry to help improve productivity to make sure that the palm can yield not 4 tons per hectare, but possibly 6 to 7 tons per hectare in the future. And this can be brought about by new technologies like advanced breeding material that we are researching, which can actually produce such high yield plantations in the future. In the long run, deficits in oil and fats in South Korea will remain. We think that the Korean capacity to produce your own soybean is very limited. You have to import the soybean, but that is even not enough because soybean has very little oil in it. You still have to import palm. And yet palm, being cost competitive and versatile and nutritious, has a big role to supplement this shortage. Currently, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Argentina are the 3 countries able to net export oils and fats. Even Argentina is fast removing their capacity to net export because of their mandate on biodiesel for local consumption. So only the 2 palm oil exporters would be able to supply Korea and the rest of the world with adequate requirements for your adequate supply for your requirements. So palm oil is again playing an important role in assuring food security, not only in your country but globally. And Malaysia is your reliable supplier. This is my advertisement of palm oil, judging from the years of experience in being the world-class producer and exporter, where its products are exported to more than 150 countries globally. This is contributed by the strict regulation in ensuring that all palm oil produced is of good quality. Thank you very much for your attention.